When Keanu Reeves arrived at his new villa, he witnessed a disturbing scene of his wealthy neighbor's cruel treatment toward his helpless dog. However, the entitled rich man had no idea that Keanu Reeves was his new neighbor, and unlike many others, he was not the kind of person to look away. The sleek black car glided through the streets of the luxurious Silverwood neighborhood, its tinted windows reflecting the pristine lawns and stately homes that lined the way. Inside, Keanu Reeves sat in silence, his fingers absently tracing the leather armrest as he gazed out at the passing scenery. The morning air was crisp and invigorating, carrying with it the promise of a new chapter in his life. As the car approached its destination, Keanu rolled down the window, allowing the fresh breeze to ruffle his hair. For over a decade he had owned this villa, yet it had remained a distant investment, a place he had only known through rental agreements and property management reports. As he sat there taking in the moment, the vibration of his phone interrupted his reverie. Keanu glanced at the screen, seeing a text from his assistant, Patrick. With a slight smile, he tapped the call button, bringing the phone to his ear as Patrick's voice filled the car's interior. "Good morning, Keanu," Patrick said, his tone professional yet warm. There was a familiarity in his voice that spoke of years of working together, of a relationship that had grown beyond mere employer and employee. "I wanted to touch base with you about the villa. I instructed the maids to deep clean the house all week. It should be sparkling like a hotel by now." Keanu chuckled softly, appreciating Patrick's attention to detail. "Thanks, Patrick," he replied, his voice low and gravelly. "But you know I don't need it to feel like a hotel. I'm hoping it'll feel more like home." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and Keanu could almost hear Patrick's knowing smile. "That's exactly what I meant," his assistant replied after a moment. "A comfortable place for you to stay these next few months until your current projects are done. I know how important it is for you to have a space that feels personal, not just another impersonal hotel suite." "I appreciate that," Keanu said, his voice sincere. He gazed out at the villa, trying to imagine what it would be like inside, how it would feel to make it his own space, even if only temporarily. Patrick hesitated for a moment before adding, "If you want, I can come to the villa. I could always be on standby if you need anything. You know I don't mind, and it might make the transition easier." Keanu shook his head, even though Patrick couldn't see him. It was a kind offer, but Keanu had always valued his independence, even in the midst of the often chaotic world of Hollywood. "No need for that," he said gently. "I have a butler here, and I can take care of matters myself. But thank you for the offer. It means a lot." "Keanu, you never change," Patrick said, his tone affectionate. There was a warmth in his voice that spoke of the deep respect and fondness he held for the actor. "Anyway, call me if you need anything at all. Day or night, you know I'm here for you." As the call ended, Keanu found himself smiling. The car began to move again, approaching a set of ornate gates. With a soft hum, they swung open, granting access to the private driveway beyond. Keanu felt a small thrill of excitement as the car rolled onto his property. This was it, the moment he had been anticipating for weeks. The vehicle came to a smooth stop, and Keanu took a deep breath, centering himself before stepping out. As he emerged from the car, the full beauty of the villa revealed itself. The Mediterranean-inspired architecture was a stark contrast to the modern mansions that dominated much of Beverly Hills. Terracotta roof tiles gleamed in the morning sun, their warm hue complementing the creamy white of the stucco walls. Wrought iron balconies adorned with trailing vines added a touch of old-world charm, while large windows promised light-filled interiors. As he stood there, taking in the sight of his long-owned but never inhabited home, a man in a crisp uniform approached. He was tall and lean, with graying hair and a posture that spoke of years of service in high-end households. "Welcome, Mr. Reeves," he said with a slight bow, his voice cultured and respectful. "I'm Malvin, your butler. The staff and I are delighted to have you here. The maids are ready to assist you with your luggage whenever you're ready to go inside." Keanu nodded in acknowledgement, appreciating Malvin's professional demeanor. However, the idea of immediately sequestering himself inside didn't appeal to him just yet. The morning was beautiful, and he felt a desire to explore his surroundings a bit more. "Thank you, Malvin," Keanu replied, his voice warm. "I think I'd like to take a stroll around the neighborhood first while it's still cool. Could you have my bags taken to my room in the meantime, and my clothes ironed and placed in the wardrobe?" "Of course, sir," Malvin responded without missing a beat. He turned slightly, gesturing to the waiting staff who had been standing at a respectful distance. They immediately moved to the car, efficiently beginning to unload Keanu's luggage. As Keanu made his way towards the gate, he couldn't help but feel a mix of emotions. This place, which had been nothing more than a line item in his portfolio for so long, was now to be his home for the next few months. He hoped that within its walls, he would find not just luxury, but the comfort and peace he sought. The thought both excited and slightly unnerved him. As Keanu walked, he allowed his mind to wander, contemplating the months ahead. He had chosen to stay here during the filming of his latest project, hoping the change of scenery would help him delve deeper into his character. The sound of a dog barking in the distance caught his attention, pulling him from his thoughts. It was a reminder that even in this seemingly perfect world, life, with all its complexities and imperfections, still existed. As Keanu approached the gate, his attention was drawn to a figure on the sidewalk just outside. A white man in his mid-50s, dressed in expensive loungewear and sporting wireless earbuds, was walking a young brown Ridgeback mix. The dog, a beautiful creature with a sleek coat and soft eyes, wore a collar that looked a bit too tight and a leash that seemed unnecessarily heavy for its size. As Keanu watched, the dog took a few tentative steps forward, its movements careful as if it were treading on eggshells. Then, perhaps driven by need or marking instinct, it lifted its leg to urinate on the gate. What happened next made Keanu's blood run cold. The man's face, which had been impassive moments before, suddenly contorted with anger. He yanked the dog's chain harshly, the force of it nearly lifting the animal off its feet. "Bad, stupid dog," he snarled, his voice loud enough to carry clearly to where Keanu stood. The venom in his tone was shocking, completely at odds with the peaceful morning and luxurious surroundings. "You never learn, do you, filthy animal, no matter how many times I've taught you?" The dog let out a pitiful whimper, a sound that tugged at Keanu's heart. Its tail tucked between its legs, and it cowered, trying to make itself as small as possible. The man jerked the chain again, forcing the dog to stop midstream. For a horrifying moment, it looked as if he might kick the animal, his foot lifting slightly off the ground. But then, as if sensing he was being watched, the man's eyes met Keanu's. The change that came over him was as sudden as it was unsettling. The anger vanished from his face, replaced by a warm, welcoming smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. His body language shifted from aggressive to open and friendly in the blink of an eye. "Well, hello there," he called out, his voice now warm and inviting, as if the outburst of moments ago had never happened. He tugged the dog along as he approached Keanu, his hand extended in greeting. "You must be the owner of this beautiful villa. I don't believe we've had the pleasure of meeting before." Keanu hesitated for a moment, the abrupt change in the man's behavior leaving him unsettled. Nevertheless, years of navigating Hollywood's social circles had taught him to maintain his composure in even the most uncomfortable situations. He stepped forward, shaking the man's hand firmly. "Nice to meet you," Keanu said, his voice polite but reserved. "I'm Keanu Reeves." The man's eyes lit up with recognition, his smile widening. Of course, I've seen your films. Brilliant work, truly brilliant. I'm Graham Whitlock, been living in this neighborhood for 25 years now." He gestured expansively, as if laying claim to the entire street. "Quite a community we have here." Keanu nodded, still processing the stark contrast between Graham's current friendliness and his earlier behavior towards the dog. His eyes flickered to the animal, which was now cowering behind Graham's legs, its body trembling slightly. Graham followed Keanu's gaze and let out a laugh that sounded forced. "Ah, don't mind old Rusty here. He's a bit of a handful sometimes, but we're working on it. You know how rescue dogs can be." Keanu's eyebrows rose slightly at this. The dog's behavior seemed less like that of a difficult rescue and more like that of an abused animal. However, he kept his thoughts to himself for the moment, not wanting to jump to conclusions. "I've seen quite a few people come and go from your villa over the years," Graham continued, seemingly eager to change the subject. "Short-term vacation rentals, right? Must be nice to finally stay here yourself." Keanu nodded, grateful for the shift in conversation. "That's right. This is actually my first time staying here myself. I've owned it for over a decade, but it's always been a rental property until now." Graham chuckled, a sound that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Well, don't worry, they were all nice guests. We've had no trouble at all." He paused, then added with a hint of pride, "I'm sure you'll find our little community quite welcoming. I myself am a bit of a local celebrity, you could say." Keanu raised an eyebrow, inviting Graham to elaborate. "I'm a best-selling author and speaker in self-help and New Age philosophy circles," Graham explained, his chest puffing out slightly. "My book, The Path to Peaceful Power, has sold millions of copies. I host retreats, give TED Talks, you name it. My online presence is quite significant, if I do say so myself." As Graham continued to speak about his accomplishments, Keanu found his gaze drawn back to the dog. Rusty, as Graham had called him, was still cowering, his tail tucked tightly between his legs. The animal's posture spoke volumes, ears flat against his head, body low to the ground, eyes darting nervously between Graham and Keanu. "I preach the importance of mindfulness, compassion, and authenticity," Graham was saying, his voice filled with self-importance. "It's all about finding inner peace and projecting that peace into the world around us." The irony of Graham's words, given his earlier treatment of Rusty, was not lost on Keanu. He nodded politely, but his mind was elsewhere, already forming connections between Graham's carefully maintained public image and the reality of his behavior when he thought no one was watching. As Graham continued his self-promotional monologue about his books and speaking engagements, Keanu's attention was drawn once again to Rusty. The Ridgeback mix, still trembling slightly from the earlier rough treatment, was carefully lifting its leg near Keanu's front flower garden. It was clear the poor animal hadn't been able to fully empty its bladder during the first interrupted attempt. Keanu watched with a mixture of sympathy and concern as Rusty tried to relieve himself as discreetly as possible. The dog's movements were hesitant, his eyes constantly darting back to Graham as if expecting another outburst of anger. Graham, who had been extolling the virtues of his latest self-help seminar, suddenly noticed what Rusty was doing. His face flushed with embarrassment, a stark contrast to the confident demeanor he had been projecting moments before. In an instant, his hand tightened on the leash and he yanked it sharply. "Oh, I do apologize," Graham said, his voice strained with forced politeness. The sudden shift in his tone was jarring, a glimpse of the anger from earlier bleeding through his carefully maintained facade. "It seems Rusty here is being a bit naughty today." Keanu's eyes narrowed slightly as he observed the interaction more closely. What he saw disturbed him deeply. Rusty, already thin and nervous, seemed to shrink even further under Graham's harsh gaze. The dog's ribs were clearly visible through his coat, suggesting severe undernourishment. Patches of fur were missing in places, hinting at possible skin conditions or stress-related hair loss. But it was Rusty's overall demeanor that truly broke Keanu's heart. The dog's legs trembled, seeming barely able to support its weight. Everything about Rusty's posture screamed fear. Head held low, tail tucked tightly between its legs, ears pressed flat against its skull. This wasn't just a nervous rescue dog. This was an animal living in constant terror. Graham, noticing Keanu's concerned gaze, quickly interjected, his voice taking on a tone of exaggerated concern. "I suppose it's time for me to get this dirty beast home for a bath," he said, his words light but with an undercurrent of tension. "It was a pleasure meeting you, Keanu. Welcome to the neighborhood." As Graham turned to leave, tugging Rusty along behind him, Keanu couldn't help but speak up. The actor had always been known for his kindness and compassion, and the sight of Rusty's obvious distress was more than he could bear in silence. "Is everything all right with your dog?" he asked, trying to keep his voice neutral, despite the concern churning in his gut. "He looks a bit unwell. I have a friend who's a vet if you need a recommendation." Graham's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, a flash of something, anger, fear. crossing his face before it was quickly masked by his practiced charm. "Oh, that's very kind of you, but Rusty is just fine," he said, his words coming out smoothly, as if he'd rehearsed them many times before. "You see, he's a rescue dog. The shelter provided full vaccinations, of course, but he's still adjusting to his new home." Keanu nodded slowly, not entirely convinced by Graham's elaborate explanation. He had known many rescue dogs in his life, and while adjustment periods were common, the level of fear and physical neglect he was seeing in Rusty seemed far beyond normal. Graham, perhaps sensing Keanu's skepticism, quickly launched into more detail. "We're working on helping him gain some weight," he continued, his voice taking on a confiding tone. "And he's still getting used to the neighborhood. You know how it is with these problematic breeds. It takes time and patience." Before Keanu could press further, Graham suddenly changed the subject, his voice becoming animated. "Say, I almost forgot. We're having our neighborhood's 75th anniversary celebration at my house soon. You simply must come," he said, his tone enthusiastic. "We'll have activities for children, dog competitions, door prizes, the works. It's scheduled between 11 a.m. and lunch. All the neighbors will be there." The sudden shift in conversation left Keanu slightly off balance. He found himself nodding automatically, his mind still processing the disturbing scene he had witnessed and the inconsistencies in Graham's story. "That sounds interesting," Keanu managed, forcing a polite smile. "I'm having a schedule meeting this afternoon, but I appreciate the invitation." As Graham bid farewell and walked away, tugging Rusty along behind him, Keanu couldn't shake the uneasy feeling in his gut. The discrepancy between Graham's public persona as a mindfulness expert and his treatment of the dog was stark and troubling. As he turned to head back into his villa, Keanu's mind was already forming connections, piecing together the reality behind Graham's carefully maintained image. The peaceful morning that had greeted Keanu upon his arrival at Silverwood Estate now felt tainted. The beauty of his surroundings seemed somehow diminished, overshadowed by the glimpse of cruelty he had witnessed. As he walked back towards his villa, Keanu found himself lost in thought, wondering what other secrets might be hiding behind the perfectly manicured lawns and gleaming facades of this exclusive neighborhood. Keanu stepped into his villa, the cool interior a welcome respite from the morning sun and the unsettling encounter outside. As the door closed behind him, he noticed with approval that the butler and maids were no longer hovering around the entrance, giving him the space he preferred. It was a small detail, but one that spoke volumes about their professionalism and understanding of his desire for privacy. As his eyes adjusted to the dimmer light inside, Keanu took in the details of the interior, silently appreciating how well Patrick had instructed the team in getting every detail right. The space felt lived in rather than sterile, with personal touches that made it feel more like a home than a rental property. In the spacious living room, family photos in vintage frames adorned the walls instead of generic decorative pieces. Keanu moved closer to examine them, a small smile playing on his lips as he recognized moments from his childhood and early career. There was a photo of him with his sisters, their young faces beaming at the camera. Another showed him on the set of one of his first films, looking nervous but determined. These weren't just any photos, they were carefully chosen moments from his life, placed here to make the space feel truly his. The furniture was arranged to encourage conversation rather than formal entertaining, with comfortable-looking sofas and armchairs grouped intimately around a low coffee table. Keanu ran his hand along the back of a leather armchair, feeling the soft, worn texture beneath his fingers. It wasn't new, but it was well cared for, the kind of piece that invited you to sink into it with a good book. Large windows stood open to the morning breeze, and wooden ceiling fans spun lazily overhead, creating a gentle cross breeze that was far more inviting than the harsh chill of air conditioning. The sound of rustling leaves from the garden outside added to the peaceful atmosphere, a stark contrast to the tension Keanu had felt during his encounter with Graham. As he moved through the space, Keanu noticed other thoughtful touches. A guitar stand in the corner held one of his favorite instruments, ready for him to pick up and play whenever the mood struck. A small writing desk near the window was stocked with his preferred brand of notebooks and pens, perfect for jotting down script ideas or personal reflections. Keanu made his way to the kitchen, drawn by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee. The space was a perfect blend of modern functionality and homey charm. Stainless steel appliances gleamed, but they were offset by warm wooden countertops and a rustic farmhouse sink. A bowl of fresh fruit sat on the island, and Keanu helped himself to an apple, savoring the crisp sweetness as he continued his exploration. As he approached the bar area, considering whether to pour himself a gin and tonic, a maid appeared carrying a tall glass of green juice. Keanu couldn't help but smile at the sight of the precisely mixed combination of kale, spinach, apple, cucumber, and lime, another testament to Patrick's attention to detail in briefing the staff about his preferences. "Thank you," Keanu said warmly, taking the glass from her. "This is perfect." The maid smiled and nodded before quietly excusing herself, leaving Keanu alone once again. He took a sip of the juice, savoring the familiar taste. It helped to settle the unease that had been growing in him since his encounter with Graham and Rusty. As he sipped his juice, Keanu's eyes fell on the giant minimalist clock on the wall. 9:30 a.m. He had some time before his scheduled meeting, and he decided to use it to relax and acclimate to his new surroundings. Settling onto the couch, Keanu pulled out his phone to check his emails. The quiet of the house enveloped him, broken only by the soft whir of the ceiling fans and the occasional distant bird call from the garden. For a moment, he allowed himself to relax, thinking that perhaps staying here for the next 3 months wouldn't be so bad after all. He had never lived in this house before, always renting it out, and now he had the chance to truly enjoy it. Just as he was beginning to lose himself in his correspondence, a sound cut through his concentration, a high-pitched whimper followed by a pain-filled howl. The noise carried clearly despite the distance between properties, suggesting significant distress. Keanu's head snapped up, his body tensing. The peaceful atmosphere of moments ago shattered, replaced by a sense of urgency and concern. He set his phone and juice aside, rising to his feet in one fluid motion. The sound had been unmistakable, an animal in pain, and given his earlier encounter, he had a sinking feeling about its source. Moving with purpose, Keanu first made his way to the backyard near the swimming pool, trying to pinpoint the sound's origin. The expansive yard, with its meticulously maintained landscaping and inviting pool area, seemed at odds with the distressing sounds that had disturbed the morning peace. Keanu scanned the area, his eyes searching for any sign of movement or distress in the neighboring properties. Finding the angle insufficient, he quickly headed back inside and up the stairs to his balcony. From this vantage point, he had a clear view into Graham's property next door. What he saw made his heart sink. Graham was entering his house from the backyard, his posture tense and movements agitated. The dog's cries continued, seeming to come from behind a dense row of ornamental bushes. Keanu realized with growing anger that the bushes were deliberately placed to block the view from the street, creating a hidden area where anything could happen unseen by neighbors or passers-by. As the cries continued, Keanu's mind raced. The contrast between Graham's public persona and the reality he was witnessing was stark and disturbing. The man who preached mindfulness and compassion seemed to be hiding a dark secret, one that involved the mistreatment of a helpless animal. Keanu knew he couldn't simply ignore what was happening. Something had to be done, but he also understood the delicacy of the situation. Graham was clearly a man of influence in the neighborhood, and rushing in without a plan could potentially make things worse for Rusty. As he stood on the balcony, the warm California sun now feeling oppressive rather than welcoming, Keanu began to formulate a plan. He couldn't stand by and let this continue, but he needed to be smart about how he approached the situation. With a deep breath, he turned away from the disturbing scene, heading back inside to gather his thoughts and decide on his next move. The peaceful retreat he had envisioned when coming to Silverwood Estate had suddenly become something far more complex. Keanu realized that his time here would involve more than just relaxation and script preparation. He was now faced with a moral dilemma, one that would require all of his compassion, intelligence, and determination to navigate. Keanu paced the length of his living room, his mind racing with the implications of what he had just witnessed. The cries of the dog, Rusty, he reminded himself, echoed in his memory, a haunting reminder of the cruelty that existed just beyond his property line. He knew he had to act, but he also understood the need for caution. Accusations of animal abuse, especially against someone as influential as Graham appeared to be, could have serious repercussions if not handled carefully. With a sense of purpose, Keanu pulled out his phone and quickly typed out a detailed message to Patrick. His fingers flew over the keypad, the message a mix of professional detachment and underlying concern. "Patrick, I need your help. There's a situation here that requires some delicate handling. I suspect potential animal abuse by a neighbor, a man named Graham Whitlock. He's apparently a well-known author and speaker. I need to investigate further, but I'll need to reschedule today's appointments. Can you handle that for me? Also, see if you can dig up any information on Whitlock or any past complaints about animal welfare in this neighborhood. Thanks." After sending the message, Keanu immediately dialed the number of the movie director he was supposed to meet for an online Zoom meeting at 11. As the phone rang, he paced the room, his free hand running through his hair in a gesture of agitation. "Hello, this is Keanu," he said when the call connected, his voice calm despite the turmoil he felt. "I'm calling about our Zoom meeting scheduled for 11. Something urgent has come up, and I was hoping we could postpone." He listened for a moment as the director expressed concern, then continued, "I understand this is short notice, and I apologize for any inconvenience. It's a sensitive situation involving potential animal abuse in my neighborhood. I can't in good conscience ignore it." As he spoke, Keanu was careful not to make specific accusations, aware of the legal implications. He thanked the director for their understanding and promised to be in touch soon to reschedule. With his immediate commitments handled, Keanu knew his next step was to gather more information. He made his way downstairs, his eyes scanning for Malvin. He found the butler adjusting the window blinds in the living room, his movements precise and efficient. "Malvin," Keanu began, keeping his voice low and conversational, "I was wondering if you could tell me a bit about the neighbors, particularly Mr. Whitlock next door. Have you noticed anything unusual?" Malvin's hands stilled on the blinds and he turned to face Keanu. There was a flicker of something, concern, perhaps even fear, in his eyes, before his professional mask slipped back into place. "Mr. Whitlock, sir?" he repeated, his tone carefully neutral. "Well, there have been some issues." Keanu raised an eyebrow, encouraging him to continue. Malvin glanced around as if to ensure they were alone before speaking again, his voice lowered. "For nearly a year now, we've been hearing constant whimpering from next door," Malvin explained, his discomfort evident in the way he fidgeted with his cufflinks. "It's prompted numerous complaints from guests." "And how were these complaints handled?" Keanu pressed gently. Malvin sighed, his professional demeanor cracking slightly to reveal genuine concern. Each time, Mr. Whitlock gave the same response. He claimed it was a problematic rescue breed from a shelter, the result of illegal breeding. The explanation is documented in our rental records. Keanu's frown deepened as he processed this information. It aligned all too well with the rehearsed story Graham had given him earlier. And the neighbors? How do they react to this? Malvin's expression turned grim. Mr. Whitlock, he's something of a self-appointed neighborhood leader. His wealth and connections make others reluctant to challenge him. Most prefer to look the other way, I'm afraid. "What about you, Malvin?" Keanu asked, his voice soft but intense. "Do you think Graham takes proper care of that dog?" Malvin shook his head slowly, his professional demeanor cracking further to reveal genuine distress. "All the staff knows that man is rude, even toward his own employees. His behavior, it's at odds with the image he projects publicly. The way he speaks to his household staff, the way he treats that poor animal, it's not right, sir." Keanu nodded, processing this information. It confirmed his worst suspicions and strengthened his resolve to do something about the situation. "Thank you, Malvin. This has been very helpful. I need to get ready now. I'll be attending the event next door." "Very good, sir," Malvin replied, his composure regained. All your clothes have been ironed and placed in your wardrobe. Is there anything else you need? Keanu shook his head, already formulating his next move. No, thank you, Malvin. That will be all for now. As he climbed the stairs to his room, Keanu's mind was working overtime. He carefully selected his attire, casual enough for a neighborhood gathering but allowing for ease of movement if intervention became necessary. He reviewed the event timing in his head, considering how to best position himself to gather evidence of any mistreatment while maintaining his cover story. The pieces of the puzzle were starting to come together, and Keanu was more determined than ever to uncover the truth and, if necessary, save Rusty from his abusive situation. As he adjusted his collar in the mirror, his expression was one of grim determination. Whatever happened at this neighborhood event, he would be ready. The stakes were high, and Keanu knew that his actions could have far-reaching consequences. But as he thought of Rusty's frightened eyes and trembling form, he knew he couldn't stand idly by. With a deep breath, he steeled himself for what was to come, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead in his quest to bring justice and safety to a helpless animal. At precisely 11 a.m., Keanu found himself walking towards Graham's mansion. The morning sun had grown stronger, casting long shadows across the immaculate lawns and gleaming driveways of Silverwood Estate. As he passed the spot where Rusty had been forced to hold his urination earlier, a wave of sympathy washed over him. He could only imagine the desperation the poor animal must have felt, to be yanked away midstream and then resort to relieving itself in Keanu's yard. The closer he got to Graham's property, the more elaborate the decorations became. Colorful banners proclaiming 75 years of Silverwood excellence hung from perfectly trimmed trees. Balloons in silver and gold bobbed gently in the breeze, their shiny surfaces reflecting the sunlight. It was a display of wealth and community pride that would have been impressive under normal circumstances, but to Keanu, it now seemed like a thin veneer covering a darker reality. A staff member greeted him at the entrance, a young man in a crisp uniform who looked both excited and nervous to be in the presence of a Hollywood star. "Welcome, Mr. Reeves," he said, his voice slightly breathless. "Mr. Whitlock is expecting you. Please follow me." Keanu nodded, following the young man into the house. The interior of Graham's home was a stark contrast to the warmth of Keanu's villa. Everything was rigidly organized, luxury on display without a hint of comfort or character. The walls were adorned with large, abstract paintings that looked expensive but soulless. Crystal vases held perfect arrangements of flowers that seemed too pristine to be real. It felt more like a showroom than a home, each piece carefully chosen to impress rather than to be lived with. As they passed through the foyer, Keanu's trained actor's eye took in every detail, filing away information that might prove useful later. He noticed a slight scuff on the otherwise perfect marble floor near a closed door. As Keanu stepped into the living room area, Graham appeared, his face set in a wide smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Keanu, so glad you could make it," he exclaimed, clapping a hand on Keanu's shoulder. The touch was just a bit too firm, a subtle assertion of dominance that Keanu didn't miss. "Come, let me introduce you to everyone. We're all gathered in the backyard." Graham led Keanu through the house, past rooms filled with expensive furniture and art pieces that seemed more for show than comfort. As they walked, Graham kept up a steady stream of chatter about the neighborhood's history and the importance of the 75th anniversary celebration. They stepped out onto a vast patio overlooking an expansive backyard. The space was filled with people, all dressed in casual but clearly expensive attire. Conversations hushed momentarily as heads turned to see who had arrived, and a ripple of excitement passed through the crowd as Keanu was recognized. "Everyone," Graham announced, his voice carrying across the yard, "I'm sure you all recognize our newest neighbor, the esteemed Keanu Reeves." A chorus of greetings and excited murmurs filled the air. People began to approach, eager to meet the Hollywood star in their midst. Keanu found himself shaking hands and exchanging pleasantries, all while keeping a watchful eye out for any sign of Rusty. "Mr. Reeves, we loved you in John Wick. Keanu, how are you enjoying our little neighborhood? Will you be staying long? We'd love to have you at our next book club meeting." The questions and comments came in a steady stream, and Keanu responded with his characteristic politeness and charm. However, his mind was only partially engaged in the conversations. He was acutely aware of Graham hovering nearby, watching his interactions with a calculating gaze. As the initial excitement of his arrival began to die down, Graham steered Keanu towards a group of what appeared to be the neighborhood's most influential residents. "Keanu," Graham said, his voice taking on a conspiratorial tone, "you know, you're known for your humble, simple, and calm personality. Perhaps we should do a talk together in the future, or even co-write a book. What do you say?" Keanu managed a polite smile, but inwardly he grimaced at the thought. "That's very kind of you to suggest, Graham," he replied diplomatically, "but I prefer to keep my personal philosophy personal." Graham's smile tightened almost imperceptibly, a flash of annoyance crossing his face before it was quickly masked. Of course," he said smoothly. "Just a thought. We're always looking for new perspectives in the self-help world." After a few more minutes of small talk, Keanu excused himself, claiming he needed to use the restroom. As he made his way back into the house, he passed by an area at the side garden that caught his attention. A fenced section of the yard contained elaborate obstacle courses, blocks, bars, and tunnels, clearly set up for some kind of dog competition. Keanu's heart sank as he thought of Rusty. In his weakened state, the dog wouldn't stand a chance at completing these obstacles. He could already imagine the poor animal being laughed at, mocked, or even punished for failing to perform. The setup seemed designed to humiliate, and Keanu felt a surge of anger at the cruelty of it all. As he continued towards the house, Keanu's mind was racing. He needed to find Rusty, to see for himself the conditions the dog was being kept in. But he also knew he had to be careful. One wrong move could alert Graham and potentially make things worse for the animal he was trying to help. Keanu's eyes scanning for any signs of where Rusty might be kept. The pristine interior gave no hints of a dog's presence inside. No toys, no beds, not even a stray hair. It was as if Rusty's existence had been completely erased from the public areas of the home. Keanu kept his senses alert for any sound or smell that might lead him to Rusty. The house seemed eerily quiet, the sounds of the party outside muffled by thick walls and heavy doors. Just as he was about to give up, Keanu heard a faint whimper coming from the side garden beyond the obstacle course. It was so soft, he almost thought he had imagined it. But then it came again, slightly louder this time. With a deep breath to steady himself, Keanu moved towards the door. He knew he was taking a risk, but the thought of Rusty suffering just out of sight of the cheerful party outside steeled his resolve. The door led to the side garden that connected to the backyard where the event guest gathered. The entire vast garden encircled the house in the center, and there were doors at each side. Keanu realized this area was close to where he had seen the dog from his balcony earlier. He peered around a small corner hidden by dense bushes, and to his shock, he found Rusty tied to a pole. The area was concealed, separated by a row of ornamental shrubs that provided both visual and auditory cover. The sight that greeted Keanu made his blood run cold. Rusty looked even weaker and more malnourished than before. The dog was salivating excessively, and his legs were trembling. His eyes, once soulful, now appeared red and unfocused. As Keanu approached cautiously, intending to comfort the animal, Rusty let out a loud cry of distress. Keanu realized with horror that the dog was seriously bruised, particularly in the tender area of his stomach. Keanu's eyes scanned the area, looking for any sign of food or water. To his dismay, he found nothing. No bowls, no scraps, not even a puddle on the ground. It was clear that Rusty had been left here without even the most basic necessities. Determined to at least quench the dog's thirst, Keanu spotted a garden hose nearby. However, as he reached for it, Rusty cowered in fear, pressing himself against the pole as if trying to disappear. The dog's reaction told Keanu all he needed to know. Graham must have used the hose as a tool for punishment. Instead of using the hose directly, Keanu cupped water in his hands, carefully helping Rusty drink several times to quench his thirst. He took his time until Rusty showed signs of having had enough. Gently, he rubbed the dog's ears and chest, murmuring words of comfort. "Hang on, buddy," Keanu whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "I promise I won't let them make you compete in that obstacle course. We're going to get you out of here." Just as he was talking to Rusty, Keanu realized he wasn't alone anymore. Graham appeared from around the corner of the shrubs, walking towards him with a look of barely concealed anger. "Perhaps you lost your way to the toilet," Graham said, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "It should be inside the house, you know." Keanu stood slowly, positioning himself between Graham and Rusty. "What the hell are you doing to your dog, Graham?" he demanded, his voice low and intense. "Why is he so malnourished and wounded?" Graham repeated his earlier excuses, saying, "I told you about the dog. He's a rescue. These things take time." Keanu mentioned Rusty's aversion to the garden hose, despite the dog's clear need for water. Graham's expression darkened as he responded, "You know, that dog hasn't listened since the day I brought it home from the shelter. It doesn't even appreciate being rescued. It's a useless breed and won't deserve better treatment until it learns to behave. The hose is just a tool to teach it some obedience. You had no idea how aggressive he was when he first arrived." The confrontation that had been brewing since their first encounter that morning was about to come to a head, and Keanu was prepared to face whatever consequences came with standing up for Rusty. Keanu's mind reeled as he processed Graham's callous words. The cognitive dissonance between the man's public image as a compassionate self-help guru and the cruel reality before him was staggering. Taking a deep breath to steady himself, Keanu decided to probe further, hoping to understand the depths of Graham's deception. "If you don't have the commitment to take care of a dog, why did you adopt him in the first place?" Keanu asked, his voice tight with controlled anger. He was acutely aware of Rusty cowering behind him, the dog's fear a palpable presence in the secluded side garden. Graham's face twisted into a sneer, all pretense of civility abandoned. "It wasn't my idea," he said dismissively, waving a hand as if brushing away an annoying insect. "My young daughter begged for a dog. She wanted some cute, expensive breed like a golden retriever. But I saw an opportunity." Keanu raised an eyebrow, silently urging Graham to continue. The sounds of the party in the main backyard filtered through the shrubs, creating a surreal backdrop to their intense conversation. "I chose a rescue," Graham explained, his tone matter-of-fact, as if discussing a business transaction rather than a living, feeling creature. "It was perfect for my image. I was working on my new book, doing interviews. Having a rescue dog with me everywhere, it portrayed me as altruistic and compassionate. The PR works and the media ate it up." Keanu felt a wave of disgust wash over him. "So Rusty was just a prop for your public relations?" he asked, his voice low and filled with barely contained anger. Graham shrugged, seemingly unaffected by Keanu's obvious disgust. "I never liked it personally," he continued, his eyes cold as he looked at Rusty. "Those sad eyes, that lean frame, that unpolished appearance. It has so much trauma it was a burden to train, disobedient from day one." "Rusty has soulful eyes," Keanu countered, his voice soft but firm. He turned slightly, looking at the trembling dog behind him. "He's lovely, and with your resources you could easily hire a trainer to help with any behavioral issues." "Why waste money on an ungrateful dog?" Graham scoffed, his voice filled with contempt. "It's not like it's a human child, it's just an animal." The pieces fell into place in Keanu's mind, painting a picture of neglect and cruelty that made his stomach churn. "So that's how Rusty became malnourished," he said, his voice filled with quiet anger. "Neglect, minimal food and water, and I'm guessing the occasional physical punishment when he misbehaved." Graham's silence was all the confirmation Keanu needed. The self-help guru's face was a mask of defiance, daring Keanu to challenge him further. "This has to end now," Keanu declared, his voice firm and unwavering. "There's no way I'm letting Rusty participate in that obstacle course spectacle you've set up. It's cruel and inhumane." To Keanu's surprise, Graham laughed. It was a cold, mirthless sound that seemed to hang in the air of the secluded garden. "You're taking this far too seriously," he said, attempting to ease the tension with a forced smile that didn't reach his eyes. "It's not a championship event, just entertainment. Who cares if the dog wins or not? The children and neighbors love it." Keanu's eyes narrowed, his jaw clenching at Graham's casual dismissal of Rusty's suffering. "If you go through with this, I'll expose you to all the other neighbors," he threatened, his voice low and intense. "They'll see what you're really doing to Rusty. Your carefully crafted image will crumble." Graham's laughter grew louder, more mocking. "Go ahead," he challenged, spreading his arms wide in a gesture of false invitation. "They all know. They stay silent because of my influence. They all love me." His voice took on a cruel edge as he continued. "A dog is just a dog, Keanu. It's not as precious as human life. They are the lowly beings of the universe's creation." Keanu looked around, suddenly aware of how close they were to the main party. He could hear the murmur of conversations and the clink of glasses just beyond the shrubs. He realized with a sinking feeling that Graham might be right. How many of those smiling, well-dressed neighbors had turned a blind eye to Rusty's suffering? How many had chosen their social standing over the welfare of a helpless animal? "See," Graham said triumphantly, noticing Keanu's moment of doubt. "What did I tell you? In this world, influence and image are everything, and I have both in spades." In that moment, Keanu realized the full extent of the situation. It wasn't just Graham who was complicit in Rusty's abuse. The entire neighborhood had turned a blind eye, prioritizing their social standing over the welfare of a helpless animal. The realization made him feel sick, but it also strengthened his resolve. Knowing he couldn't rely on local support, Keanu made a snap decision. He pulled out his phone and dialed 911, hoping that law enforcement might be able to intervene where the neighborhood had failed. But as he explained the situation to the dispatcher, his heart sank. Without concrete evidence of abuse, they couldn't intervene immediately. The call ended fruitlessly, leaving Keanu feeling more alone than ever in his fight for Rusty. Graham's smug expression only fueled Keanu's determination. "This is a joke," Graham said, waving his hand dismissively. "A waste of my time. If you like the dog so much, just take the filthy animal and go. I'd be glad to get rid of it now that I no longer need it for PR." Keanu stared at Graham, disgust and resolve warring within him. He knew that simply taking Rusty wouldn't be enough. Graham needed to face consequences for his actions. But for now, getting Rusty to safety had to be the priority. "This isn't over," Keanu promised, his voice low and intense. "I will make sure you face justice for what you've done to this helpless animal. Your days of hiding behind your reputation are numbered." Graham's laughter rang out once more, echoing in the confined space of the side garden. "Try your best," he taunted, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "You might be a celebrity, but you're not the only rich person in this neighborhood. Better preserve that reputation of yours carefully, Keanu. You never know what kind of stories might start circulating." Keanu's reply was calm but filled with conviction. "Yes, I'm preserving my reputation by staying true to myself. Make sure you become what you teach, Graham, or very soon people will start to see through the cracks in your facade." As Keanu bent down to remove Rusty's metal chain, replacing it with the rope leash he had in his pocket, he was acutely aware of the gravity of the situation. He was challenging not just Graham, but an entire system that allowed such cruelty to exist behind closed doors. With Rusty trotting loyally at his side, Keanu strode past Graham and through the thick shrubs into the expansive backyard. The bright sunlight greeted them, along with the lively hum of the party still in full swing. Keanu felt the weight of the guests' stares, their eyes tracking his every move. Whispers flitted behind hands discreetly covering mouths, a faint murmur of judgment and curiosity. As he exited through the gate with Rusty, their retreat became a quiet indictment, a poignant reminder of the moral void in a community that had willfully chosen to ignore what was right. With Rusty at his side, Keanu made his way back to the villa with determined strides. The dog's unsteady steps spoke volumes about the neglect and abuse he had suffered. Unable to bear it any longer, Keanu scooped Rusty into his arms, feeling the frail weight of his burden. His thoughts raced with urgency. Rusty needed immediate attention, but beyond that, he required a lasting solution to secure his safety and nurture his recovery. Keanu resolved then and there to give the dog the care and protection he had been so cruelly denied. As they approached Keanu's property, he could feel Rusty's hesitation. The dog had likely never known kindness from humans, and every step away from his former prison was both a relief and a source of anxiety. Keanu spoke softly to him, offering reassurances with every step. "It's okay, Rusty," he murmured, his voice gentle and soothing. "You're safe now. No one's going to hurt you anymore." They entered the villa, the cool interior, a stark contrast to the heated confrontation they had just left. The butler and staff looked up in surprise, their eyes widening at the sight of the malnourished dog beside their employer. To their credit, they quickly composed themselves, ready to assist. "Mr. Reeves," Malvin said, stepping forward with a mixture of concern and curiosity on his face, "is everything all right? Can we be of assistance?" Keanu nodded, grateful for the butler's professionalism. "Yes, Malvin, I need your help. Could you please have one of the maids fill a bathtub with warm water? Not too hot, just comfortably warm." Malvin nodded, immediately turning to instruct one of the maids. Keanu then addressed him directly again. "I also need you to go to the nearest pet store. We need dog shampoo, lice treatment, and grooming tools, and some high-quality dog food, something easily digestible for a dog that's been malnourished. Take the chauffeur with you. Speed is of the essence." Malvin's eyebrows rose slightly, but he didn't question the unusual request. "Of course, sir. I'll leave right away. Is there anything else you need?" Keanu thought for a moment. "Yes, actually. Could you also pick up a soft dog bed and some gentle toys? Nothing too stimulating for now, just something comforting." "Certainly, Mr. Reeves. I'll take care of it immediately," Malvin replied, already moving towards the door. As Malvin rushed out, Keanu gently guided Rusty further into the house. The dog's eyes darted around nervously, unused to such a clean and spacious environment. Every new sight and smell seemed to overwhelm him, and he pressed close to Keanu's leg, seeking reassurance. "It's okay, Rusty," Keanu said softly, crouching down to the dog's level. "You're safe here." While waiting for the supplies and the bath to be prepared, Keanu pulled out his phone once more. This time he dialed a different number, one belonging to his friend Martin, who owned an animal shelter. "Martin," Keanu said as soon as the call connected, "I need your help. I've just rescued a severely neglected dog from an abusive situation." As Keanu explained the situation, Martin listened intently, occasionally asking for clarification or offering words of support. When Keanu finished, Martin's voice was filled with both concern and determination. "Bring Rusty over whenever you have the chance," he said. "The sooner the better. We'll give him all the care and attention he needs. I'll have our vet on standby to do a full checkup." "Thank you," Keanu replied, relief evident in his voice. "I'll drive him over tomorrow morning. I want to let him rest today and start the process of cleaning him up. Is that okay?" "That's a good plan," Martin agreed. "Just be careful not to overwhelm him. Everything is new and potentially frightening for him right now. Go slow and let him set the pace." They discussed the immediate care Rusty would need, with Martin offering advice on feeding and comfort. "Don't let him eat or drink too much at once," he cautioned. "His stomach won't be used to it. He needs to gain weight gradually. Small, frequent meals are best for now." They ended the call with a mutual understanding, Martin thanking Keanu for saving Rusty and promising to take good care of him when Keanu brings him to the shelter. As Keanu put his phone away, he felt a sense of relief. With Martin's help, Rusty would have the professional care he needed to recover fully. A maid appeared to inform him that the bath was ready. Almost simultaneously, Malvin returned with the supplies from the pet store. The butler's arms were laden with bags containing everything Keanu had requested, and more. "Shall I bathe the dog, sir?" Malvin offered, setting down the bags. "Or perhaps one of the staff could attend to it." Keanu shook his head, a small smile on his face. "No, thank you, Malvin. I'll do it myself. Rusty needs to learn to trust humans again, and I want to be part of that process." With gentle coaxing, Keanu led Rusty to the bathroom. The dog was hesitant at first, clearly unfamiliar with such kind treatment. But as Keanu spoke softly and moved slowly, Rusty began to relax slightly. The bathroom was warm, the large tub filled with comfortably warm water. Keanu had made sure it wasn't too deep, just enough to clean Rusty without frightening him. Carefully, he helped Rusty into the water. The dog tensed and trembled at first, but as Keanu's hands moved gently over his fur, applying the shampoo and working out the tangles, Rusty began to lean into the touch. As he worked, Keanu found himself talking to Rusty, explaining what he was doing and promising a better future. "You're safe now, buddy," he murmured. "No one's going to hurt you again. We're going to get you healthy and find you a loving home. You'll never have to be afraid again." The process was long and meticulous. Keanu took care to be gentle around the areas where Rusty showed signs of pain or discomfort. He carefully applied the lice treatment, grimacing at the evidence of neglect, but determined to give Rusty a fresh start. By the time the bath was over, Rusty looked noticeably better. His fur, though still thin in places, was clean and free of tangles. But more importantly, there was a new light in his eyes, a tentative trust beginning to form. As Keanu dried Rusty off with a soft towel, he felt a surge of protectiveness. This wasn't just about exposing Graham's cruelty or making a point about animal welfare. It was about giving this innocent creature a chance at the life he deserved, a life full of love, care, and safety. With Rusty clean and dry, Keanu led him to the living room where Malvin had set up the new dog bed. It was plush and comfortable, placed in a quiet corner where Rusty could feel secure. Beside it was a bowl of fresh water and a small portion of the high-quality dog food Malvin had purchased. Rusty approached the bed cautiously, sniffing it with interest. With a little encouragement from Keanu, he finally stepped onto it, turning in a circle before settling down. The look of contentment on his face as he sank into the soft material was heartwarming. Keanu sat on the floor beside the bed, gently stroking Rusty's head. "You did great today, buddy," he said softly. "Tomorrow we'll go see my friend Martin. He's going to help you get healthy and strong. And I promise you, Rusty, I'm going to make sure you never have to go back to that place again." As the afternoon wore on, Keanu remained by Rusty's side, offering comfort and reassurance. He knew that the road ahead would be challenging, not just for Rusty's recovery, but in bringing Graham to justice and exposing the complicity of the Silverwood estate community. But as he watched Rusty slowly relax into nap, Keanu knew that every effort would be worth it. This was just the beginning of Rusty's journey to recovery, and Keanu was committed to seeing it through. The peaceful retreat he had envisioned when coming to Silverwood Estate had turned into something far more meaningful, a mission to bring light to the darkness that lurked behind the neighborhood's perfect facade.